your prediction for today? Will it be cold or will it rain? You should see the way it looks outside my window. It's not exactly what I'm looking for. Where did all the colors go?
More about you, your background, and how you actually started, or how you pursued aviation.
And it was by luck, to be honest. I grew up in a township in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal, Claremont. Fortunately, my grandmother lived in Mlazi, which was where the old airport was. And I was always slightly interested in aircraft because they were flying over us the whole time. But that was never my career. What I actually wanted to do was to be an architect. So came after school, got into varsity. My mother got laid off, unfortunately, so couldn't pay for the fees. So needed to figure out what to do with myself. So fell back on what would call interests. So because I was, looking up in the sky, I thought, hey, maybe that's something to try. And we tried it out. SAA was still training in Australia at the time, so it was quite a rigorous selection program. Unfortunately, didn't make it through there, but then the second opportunity knocked when I joined the South African Airforce. And wow, that went by quick. As soon as I joined the Air Force, I was hit by the bug, and from then on, the rest is history, to be honest.
20 years later.
Definitely.
So I find such interviews very informative because I'm actually speaking to someone who uses our products. So how do you incorporate weather in your daily decision making in your career?
Oh my God, weather is like the most important thing that's the most important decision making tool that we have. We decide through weather how much fuel we require for a flight. In a sense, the weather will determine if the flight is going to be smooth or not smooth if you don't plan correctly. But the decision making regards to weather is the most important thing. Aircraft, as much as everybody thinks the aircraft flies because of the wings and the engine is just propelling the aircraft to get into the sky. Once we're in the sky, we're just basically a cog in the system. So we're part of the elements, and we're just trying to stay afloat using weather, meteorology, and things like that, just to keep us on the good side of everything. So it's very important. It's the most important thing that we have, tool.
Because even in our aviation weather offices, we do have pilots who usually check in with us from time to time before they take off, before they land. So I really do believe that it really does constitute a huge part in your decision making in your field. So my follow-up question would be to ask you, what are the major weather disruptions when it comes to taking off and landing?
In fact, funny you mentioned that, taking off landing is the most important part of the flight. The cruise part, provided everything goes well, that's still okay. But the takeoff and landing is the most critical part. So weather at low level, which is when you're close to the ground, is the most important part. For instance, wind shear is a big factor for us, where the wind shifts in different directions close to the ground, and you are coming in for a landing. It'll take you off the path and maybe drop your wing as well, which you don't want on a fixed wing aircraft. The other one would be microbursts, big systems like that. So thunderstorms and big microbursts anywhere close to an airfield are very, very dangerous. It's things that we try and avoid, and with the new aircraft and the more advanced aircraft, we get weather radars on the aircraft, on board the aircraft. In fact, you get wind shear warnings on the aircraft as well. That will give you warnings so that you know if you should stay away from a specific runway or maybe turn the opposite runway. So things like that are extremely important to us. And they affect us definitely on the takeoff and landing, because at that instant, your aircraft is still very slow. So, like I said, the engine propels the aircraft to get into a flying speed. Once the aircraft gets to that flying speed, it's the wings that take over. And the airflow that goes over the wings and under the wings gives us the flight. So once you get into wind shear situation or microburst situation, that wind is going to be disturbed. And if you're close to the ground, it becomes a very bad situation. So that is why that's the most important part of that's where the concentration is at the highest, max, when we take off and land.
Yes, yes. Because sometimes we do get calls from pilots, especially in the high veld and the escarpment areas, and they are so worried about fog. So how is fog that much of a major disruption when it comes to taking off and landing?
This becomes a situation where, especially, there's different types of flights. So we get, I think we might even get into this a bit later. Fog basically inhibits your vision. So if you're not prepared for a foggy situation or a place where you can't land or see in front of you, then you'll have to revert to what we call instrument flying, which is the flying with reference to inside the aircraft. So you look at inside the aircraft, you don't have to see anything outside, but you fly in accordance to that. So fog is a very bad, and what happens in what we call general aviation, and other guys, instead of commercial flying or military, general aviation, a lot of guys are not fully qualified to fly into situations where they're not well prepared for instrument flying just yet. Usually they train that later. And that's where you fly into mountains, you fly into wires or anything that's in the way, because you just generally can't see. It's simple, you can't see it, yeah.
And what I really want to ask, and I'm sure a lot of people also want to know, when I'm in a plane and I'm flying somewhere, I will always hear the pilot talking about the visibility. He'll talk about the flight range that we are cruising on. How is that information actually useful for us? Because I didn't understand it up until I started studying meteorology. Then it also only made sense that, yeah, actually, okay, yes, I actually understand why they're mentioning this, but for the public who actually have no idea what you guys are talking about, how is that useful for them?
Well, it gives, I think it gives, especially for commercial flying, it gives the public a little bit more comfort that the guy that's sitting in front is happy with what he sees, number one. So it's a big comfort factor. But it also gives us the specific, how can I put it? Basically, so if I need to take off and the weather's really bad, there are limits that I can do this in. And the limits are depending on the runway, number one. If there's a single runway or double runway, there's parallel. So what that requires me is that if I take off and the weather is bad and I get a problem, engine failure, just after takeoff, I should be able to return to this runway. The weather's good enough for me to come back to this runway, or I need to have an alternate runway within a certain distance, call it an hour or 20 minutes from where I took off. So it deals, number one, with the passenger's comfort, two, and confidence. Two, it deals with us knowing where our limits are. So for instance, what is called runway visual range, RVR. Even if it's foggy on the airfield, but there's the runway visual range is how far we can see ahead of the aircraft. And if that is within limits and within law, then I'm still legally allowed to take off. You know what I mean? So the guys have really, and Met has helped us quite a lot to come in and encompass all our decision making with these types of limits, so that the guys don't get themselves stuck where there's zero visibility at all. He takes off and a problem happens and he needs to come back. And now he doesn't know how he's going to do that. Yeah. I hope that, yeah.
You really tried in layman's terms. I promise you tried your best. When I was a child, I would sit, I'm from Tata, so we have an airport that's actually quite close to home. And we would also see a lot of flights moving around, just taking off. And because you're a child, you don't really know the difference. You would just see something flying up in the sky and we'd immediately just say it's an aeroplane. But there's actually so much to it. There's a very huge difference between it. I think it also depends on the size of the aircraft. So for people who don't know and actually can't differentiate between the different aircrafts, what sizes or do they come in, the aircrafts?
Yeah, you'll be amazed. There's different categories. Funny enough, so you have a light aircraft, a medium aircraft. So it goes mainly by weight, and you get the super large jets, the A380s and things like that. But and then obviously the helicopters are on a different size. But also they also go from a piston helicopter to a turbine, medium, and then large. All depending on the weight of the aircraft. And all of this is a different license, funny enough. So it's not like driving a car. When I get into my car, I get out and I drive your car, for instance, and it's all okay.
Yes.
I need to know everything about the aircraft all over again. So I need to learn the whole aircraft, emergencies, especially because the bigger the aircraft get, the more complex they get. But as they get more complex, they get redundancies as well. So you'll get an aircraft with, instead of having a single hydraulic system, it'll have 2 or 3 separate hydraulic systems. If one fails, if 2 fails, you still can manage the aircraft with the other one. So the big thing that happens is as the aircraft get bigger by weight, they increase the redundancies on the aircraft and they become more, a little bit easier to fly in a sense, but a lot more complex stuff that you need to know about the aircraft. Yeah.
Okay. So, I believe that you, in the past almost 20 years that you have been in aviation, you have been fortunate enough to jump in all sectors, the public sector and the private sector. What can you say that you've learned from moving all these different spheres, reaching to where you are today?
Oh man, I've been blessed, like you say. I started my career in the Air Force, so that was service to the public, to the country. I learned a lot of operational flying, what we call operational flying. So all the combat stuff that you guys don't really know about until we go to war. So
The stuff we watch on TV, the CIA and the FBI, that actually exists in South Africa.
And some of us are trained in this. So rest assured, should we go to war or anything, you do have people like us that you can at least count on to get back. The private sector, I've learned a lot there as well. It's a different, and it was really nice to be able to interact with the charter kind of element of flying, where my schedule, like now, my schedule changes. I don't have a set schedule. We tend to have planned for a 2-week schedule, but it changes as soon as somebody requests a charter. So, and in the company that I am in now, we're a small group. We have 5 aircraft now, and we fly 2 or 3 different types. So I'm on 3 different types of it. I'm on 2 helicopters and 1 fixed-wing aircraft. So when we get a charter on an aircraft, it depends where everybody else is, that they might have to pull me off a flight and put me on a different flight to then get somebody else to do a specific flight. It just depends on what we are. So that flexibility taught me a lot. Even though in the military, there's a little bit of flexibility when things go wrong. We would go to the DRC, for instance, and you plan for a month. You have to come back maybe 2 months later or a month and a bit later. But it's really, I think what helps me now is, because I've been fortunate to see both sides, I think I'm a better all-rounded pilot, so it's really an awesome experience so far. And yes, you're right, I'm 18 years, I think, this year.
Also, I was on the right track. That's good. That's good. For a student who's watching this and wants to be a Xolani Vundla one day, and they are in high school and they're still trying to figure out where to go, what to do, where to start, what would you tell them? How can they also actually start pursuing aviation?
My thing, and because of our history as a country, um, this thing costs a lot if you're going to do it on your own. Right. So I'm already biased in go the military route.
Yeah.
The military route gives you very good grounding, and we get taught almost everything. I mean, there's times where you fly in formation when we two have aircraft sit very close to each other, like you see in the air show. You get taught that just as because you have to do it. So you get a lot more exposure to a lot more things if you go through the military route, and best of all, you get paid in a sense in service of your country. So I always say to guys, get your maths, physics, not math literacy, because I get this question a lot. I don't know why, but for the longest time I didn't know what it was. Not math, pure maths, physics, English. I suppose aviation is English is the universal language. So English is what you need. And geography obviously is going to help to understand meteorology and systems that weather systems and patterns. But join the military because you will get a very good training in the military. Not to say outside you're not. If you've got the money and you can do it outside, then great. Do it that way as well. It's a wonderful career to join into. And man, then the sky's the limit. It's like not even the sky anymore. You can do whatever you want to do once you've done that.
Yeah.
'Cause all I see is gray. Change my way.